John Farrell with the Farrell Law Firm. Today we are on day 2 of our 8-day action plan to get your estate plan into place. On day 1 we addressed personal property memorandums, and today on day 2 we're going to be addressing your memorial instructions. And so what are we talking about here? We're talking about your burial and funeral wishes. And why is it important to address those things with your estate plan? Well, it's important because your family may not know your wishes when it comes to your burial or to your funeral. So it's important that they know what your desires and wishes are regarding those things. Well, there was a time when you had put that type of information in your will. Oftentimes we'd see things like, I just desire to be buried in a suitable manner according to my religious beliefs, or something of that nature in the wills that were drafted. Well, it's really not done that way, and so you may be making a mistake when it comes to addressing your memorial instructions by putting it into your will. These days, we don't put memorial instructions or burial and funeral wishes into wills for a very practical reason. The practical reason is that by the time anybody reads your will, the funeral is probably going to be long gone. So we estate planning attorneys, we've heard of those situations where the family buried their loved one, and then maybe weeks later got around to reading their will, and their will stated that they wanted to be cremated, and all of a sudden they were in a predicament because they didn't really know what to do. Should they unbury the person and actually go through this process of having them cremated? So putting it into a will is just something that isn't done these days, mainly just for logistical purposes. There was a time you'd put it in your will, because oftentimes the will was several weeks, in fact, after the person passed away, so there's plenty of time to go through the will and see what their instructions were. But these days, we don't put it in there for a very practical reason. So this is the way that you handle those situations. So for us, we provide our clients with an estate planning portfolio, and in that estate planning portfolio, there's a section called Memorial Instructions. And in that section, you will put your desires and wishes as it relates to your burial and funeral wishes. These are things like whether you have any religious beliefs, whether you want it to be for friends and relatives, or would you prefer it to just be private. Perhaps you want music played, perhaps you want scripture read, things of that nature, so that everybody knows your wishes. So what you would then tell your family is, hey, look, if something happens to me, just find this portfolio that the lawyer made for me. In there, you're going to find everything you need. You're going to find things like memorial instructions. But in the portfolios that we prepare for our clients, you're also going to find things like, where do I keep my important documents? What do I want to do with my sentimental items? Who needs to be called when I pass away? What do they need to say when they make that call? It's all in that portfolio. Well, part of that portfolio is putting your burial and funeral instructions. There is a famous situation with Charles Dickens, the novelist from England. He put in his will that people weren't to wear certain things. He didn't want any people wearing flamboyant clothing at his funeral. And so he put that type of thing in his will. Now, fortunately, they were able to read that will and they were able to honor his wishes, but it would have been very tough if someone hadn't gone through the process of actually looking at his will. These days, the funeral is often, sometimes handled 3 days, maybe 4 days after the person passes away. Very little time to read the will and see what those wishes are. For us estate planning attorneys, I'll often look at wills that are drafted by other people and see if there's a section in there about memorial instructions. If there are, then I can usually tell that this is probably an attorney that doesn't do this for a living. Perhaps they do estate planning on the side, and that's why they put the memorial instructions in there. So the key here is make sure that you go to an estate planning attorney, because they know exactly how to handle those types of things, and you're going to want to address your burial and funeral wishes so that your family knows exactly what it is that you want when it comes to your funeral. All right, so that's all we have for today. Make sure that you subscribe to the channel. We put out new videos almost every day, and make sure you hit the like button, because hey, every like helps.